I'd like to share with you a passage from Mark's Gospel, chapter 6. If you happen to be curious what's in between these two sets of verses, it's big stuff, actually. It's the feeding of the 5,000, and it's Jesus walking on the water. So this is one packed chapter. But we're going to just read this one little part with those big events kind of pulled out about Jesus with his apostles talking about rest and work. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they'd done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place, all by yourselves, and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As Jesus went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when they crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. So ends the reading of God's holy word. Let us pray. Gracious God, we sort of intrude ourselves into this active set of events in Jesus' life, surrounded by so many people as well as his disciples, seeking rest, yet finding work. We ask that as we listen to this, that in some way we would apply the deepest wisdom of these passages, of these verses, to our lives, so that we too might balance play and work, rest and exertion, to your glory. Amen. Well, isn't it a bit uncanny how Jesus' invitation to come away and rest a while coincides with my vacation? And I had nothing to do with the timing of this passage, as I've said before. However, as an obedient man of faith, I must heed this call. And like Jesus and his disciples, get into the boat and head out to a deserted place. Well, at least Vine Valley. And as I've said before, these scriptures are selected years in advance by some anonymous scholar somewhere. But maybe the coincidence really isn't that amazing, because it doesn't take a genius to figure that if you drop this passage into the middle of July, somebody's going to be going on vacation. So maybe they're not that smart. Anyway, here it is. Here's the passage. Here we are listening to it. Inviting to come away to a deserted place. Every company from LL Bean to Subaru to American Airlines has capitalized on that deep human desire to get up and get away from it all. To get free and clear of all the clutter and the clatter of living in order to calm our nerves and maybe collect our wits. I'm told, believe it or not, that even folks in the island paradise of Hawaii have a favorite island where they go on vacation. At least for many, it's the island of Kauai. Presumably, if the hustle and the bustle of Oahu or Maui get to be too much for you, you go to Kauai. I'm glad they have that place. We all need a break from time to time. And so it can be very attractive to pack up and head out to one of the great expanses of nature to do just that. The problem is that when somebody finds a sweet little piece of paradise off the beaten path, undisturbed by human traffic, and then somebody else advertises said piece of paradise in a massive media engine like the New York Times with millions of readers, what happens? Well, sometimes these little gems of paradise get trashed. And we gotta go someplace else. Well, Jesus knew the importance, apparently, of getting away and having a place to get away to. The disciples were exhausted, they were wrung out after a grueling stint of serving and caring and healing and helping. So Jesus offers this lovely invitation to get away. And they do. Well, at least they try. But then the word gets out, and this place that was once set apart becomes a place that is now set upon by a flood of needy humanity. And we are pretty needy, all of us. We're tired, we're sick, we're lonely, we're afraid, etc., etc. And so we seek out something healing and fresh and untainted. And hopefully we find it. The singer-songwriter Don Henley wrote a song about what we've often done to many of our deserted places. The title of the song is The Last Resort, and it's not a happy narrative. Starting with our colonization of the East Coast and our movement into the prairies and through the mountains and onto the Pacific coast, we've too often left a trail of desolation and even desecration in our wake. Now, true enough, with 2.3 billion acres to play with in the United States, we can get away with it for a while. But sooner or later, even we run out. And then when you stand cheek by jowl on the California coast, just straining to maintain a toehold against the burgeoning humanity pushing you from behind, you probably do what anybody would do in that moment. Once again, you look west to Hawaii. The last line of Henley's rather dark song is, "They called it paradise, I don't know why. You call someplace paradise, kiss it goodbye." Maybe the sheer size of America is our downfall. For so long we've had the luxury of just moving on down the road a little bit to find the next slice of paradise. Not everybody's so fortunate, however. For example, when you live in a place like the Netherlands, which is just a little bit larger than the northern part of New York State, you run out quick. So if necessity is the mother of invention, over there scarcity became the mother of invention. You run out of places to throw your trash when you live on a postage stamp. And so you need to get real creative, and they have. Creative enough to become a world leader in the per capita production of food and renewable energy. So much so that much of their larger neighbors, including the U.S., are taking notice of the little Dutch country, taking lessons to help address our needs. We aren't told just exactly what needs propelled those folks to trudge around the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, to catch up with Jesus once again and put him to work. But it stands to reason these folks, like so many of us, ran out of something. They were hungry. And they held the conviction that this man, Jesus, could feed them, body, mind, and soul. Such is the curse of success. When you're a miracle man or a miracle woman, things get very busy and sometimes very crowded. It was, remember, Yogi Berra, who once said, "Nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded." Well, apparently that word hadn't gotten to the folks following Jesus on the beach in Galilee yet. They did go there in force. And so for the disciples, at least, a place of rest quickly became a place of work. And people began to bring their mats so as to be close to the source of life and help and hope. The place was transformed rather quickly. That's not unheard of even in this day and age. It happens many times, even right here in these United States. A noteworthy example was 13 years ago next month, when a place of recreation was transformed into a place of rescue. It was 2005, Hurricane Katrina had just nailed the Gulf Coast, and in order to try to handle this massive number of evacuees, the Houston Astrodome became home to 25,000 displaced people. It wasn't perfect, probably wasn't fun, wasn't pretty, but it was a gritty sort of hospitality that enabled people to at least lay down their mats, get some hot and cold running water, and perhaps a sliver of hope in the midst of a disaster. Our passage carries two contrasting truths that are sometimes just very hard to hold all at once. First, we hear the imperative to find rest in Christ and get refueled. And secondly, we hear that even when we can't get refueled, which is going to happen on occasion, we have more in the tank than we may realize. A bunch of years ago, I owned a 2-horse Evinrude outboard. I think it was a 1982 motor. And each autumn, I would need to run the motor dry before I stored it in the basement. So I'd disconnect the gas line and run the engine until it sputtered out. And I can tell you that if I had been crazy enough to try, I probably could have run that engine on my little boat clear across Canandaigua Lake before the carburetor ran dry. I was there for like 10 minutes each time. And then I would have to roll home. Yeah. But anyway. It held a lot more capacity than I realized. But even an Evinrude 2-horse runs out, and so do we. We run dry. And we find ourselves depleted of energy, maybe money, perhaps wisdom, even faith. And it's then that we need Jesus to show up, to offer compassion. Compassion is a funny word. In Hebrew, it literally means feeling, feeling what another feels with our guts. That kind of gut-level, visceral connection that is deeper than any Hallmark sympathy card. It's closer to blood transfusion or donating a kidney. That's what Christ offers us when we're flat out spent. And it's what he calls us to offer others too. We need our time away. We need our places of restoration and renewal, because those places are gifts of God. Gifts that we need to safeguard, as though our lives depend upon it. Because they do. Came across a study recently done in Philadelphia by the University of Pennsylvania about the effect of urban green spaces on mental health. It was fascinating. The study took over 500 different green spaces around the city, divided them into 3 groups. One group they didn't do anything to. One, they picked up the trash. And the third one, with the help of the Philadelphia Horticultural Society, they greened it all up, fixed it all up, and dolled it all up with new plants. What they found, having studied the people in the study before all of this was done and after, in terms of mental health, is that depression was reduced over 27% in the people that had access to the dolled up green spaces. And not only that, they determined that heart rates were lower for people that walked by these places. And they determined that the amount of benefit was greatest for the poorest. Indeed, these gifts of God. And we need to know that Christ empowers us far beyond our estimates, what we might imagine, giving us gifts of new life. I've used this one before, but I'm going to end with it anyway. The church bulletin read, "While the pastor is on vacation, massages can be given to the church secretary." That said, are there any volunteers to become church secretary? May the peace and the rest and the strength of Christ be with you. Amen.